The following podcast, iDesign Lab, is an SW Group production in association with 5 Star and TW Interiors. This is iDesign Lab, a podcast where creativity and curiosity meet style and design. Curator of interiors, furnishings, and lifestyles. Hosted by Tiffany Woolley, an interior designer and a style enthusiast, along with her serial entrepreneur husband, Scott. iDesign Lab is your ultimate design podcast, where we explore the rich and vibrant world of design and its constant evolution in style and trends. iDesign Lab provides industry insight, discussing the latest trends, styles, and everything in between to better help you style your life through advice from trendsetters, designers, influencers, innovators, fabricators, and manufacturers, as well as personal stories that inspire, motivate, and excite. And join us on this elevated, informative, and lively journey into the world of all things design. Welcome to the iDesign Lab podcast. Today, we're thrilled to have Jim Duckworth with us. Jim has spent over 30 years in the furniture industry, starting right after college in 1986. He first worked with Simmons, best known for their Beauty Rest mattress, before moving to Drexel Heritage. In 1993, Jim joined Century Furniture, where he's been ever since. In 2014, he helped bring Highland House into the Century family, and he continues to play a pivotal role at Century and its parent company, Rock House Farms. Jim is also actively involved with Woodbridge Furniture, working alongside his wife, Marcy. We're excited to dive into his wealth of experience and insights today.
Welcome to the iDesign Lab podcast. Today we would like to welcome Jim Duckworth, who is involved with Rock House Farm, family of brands. Top being Century, my favorite being Highland House, but we're going to have a great conversation today about the furniture industry, and we want to welcome Jim and tell us how you got your start in.
Okay, I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and went to play tennis at Ole Miss in Oxford, Mississippi, graduated from there in 1986, and was a business major and was interviewing with a lot of different companies, you know, your bigger, whether it be Coca-Cola, IBM, those kind of companies. My father was a stockbroker, was looking at some of that. But I had an uncle who was in the furniture industry, had been his whole career with Drexel Heritage.
Wow.
And so they were visiting, and we started talking. And at the time, Drexel was a pretty big company back in the 80s. They didn't necessarily hire kids. I thought, Drexel, he's had a great career. And he's like, well, we don't really hire kids right out of college. But the Simmons Company, which is the Beauty Rest mattresses, they were very well known for hiring young people, and they had one of the best training programs because they taught you not just to sell furniture to your customers, but help to sell through and help move it and get rid of it. And it was, you know, mattresses are very promotional oriented. And so, long story short, they in the Southern Division, they had 3 different factories, one in Atlanta, one in Jacksonville, and one in Dallas. And so they hired me to be a trainee there out of the Atlanta plant, which was great because I could live at home after being in college and you know, save some money. And I was hired in, I guess, July after I graduated in May of '86. And then at the October furniture market, the rep that was in Jackson, Mississippi, who was a Florida guy, had gone to the University of Florida. There was an opening in Florida, and so they moved him there. And there was 3 trainees, one in Jacksonville, one in Dallas, and myself, and I was the newest, but it also made a whole lot of sense to send the guy to Jackson, Mississippi that had gone to school in Mississippi. And so that's how that worked out. And I went there and covered Mississippi, Louisiana, the Panhandle of Florida, and parts of Alabama. And I was doing that for 2.5 years. And the Drexel Heritage rep that lived in Jackson was fairly old, and he retired. And so I was able to move on to Drexel Heritage, which would have been in the first part of '89.
Was that a goal that you were trying to
hopefully? Yeah, it was. I knew how old Milton was, and I had a hope that I could possibly get that job. And had interviewed with one other company, an upholstery company at the time, and had gotten offered a position, but rolled the dice that Milton wasn't far from retiring, and sure enough, that happened. And
was there a certain aspect of that job that you had kind of your heart set to try to get?
More money would be number one. Okay. And I felt like, if you were going to branch out into any of the other furniture companies, you needed to have case goods and upholstery background. Now with Simmons, they did have the hide-a-beds, which was a trademark. So I did sell somewhat upholstery,
Furniture,
sleepers a little bit, but that was the goal to do the full brand. And I knew a little bit from Uncle Charlie about the company, and it was a wonderful company.
So was your uncle your inspiration to get into the furniture business, or?
It was, and I'll tell you, ironically, it was real interesting. With the companies I was interviewing with, even though they were really the big companies, when they were, your entry-level salaries or stuff, I mean, they were okay. And then you interview with Simmons, and they're like, okay, so if you have these goals, if you're able to hit them, you can make X amount of dollars.
Right.
And it was a lot of money for a 23-year-old.
Right.
And so there was just, because it's full commission. And
there were
goals.
The sky's the limit. And so that was one of the things that enticed me. And I like the idea of having your office at home, being your own. I've never walked into an office at a time in my entire life.
Wow.
I mean, obviously, I don't think I could do it, to be honest with you.
Right, you're able to make your...
You're way ahead of the COVID curve.
Yeah, way ahead. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So I did that for 5.5 years and
With
was
Drexel.
covering Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas, those 3 states. And
So when
then-
you're covering states like that, working for a furniture company, I guess you're driving a lot, but you're going to all the furniture store, every place that carries.
And there were, if
Major.
you think of that time period, there were stores.
Right,
Okay?
a lot of
Correct.
The design
brick and
community
mortar.
had not yet been tapped.
Right.
It's like if you got a call from a designer, that was almost like tab, but you didn't even really
It's
pay
so
much attention to
true.
them.
Right.
You actually really had stores that you went to. And so my typical week would be, I would be in the office on pretty much all day Monday and do office type work.
At home.
At home, and
home, okay.
in the office, and I had my own office in there. When I was in an apartment, it was 2-bedroom, and
Right,
one of them was.
yeah.
And when I got married in '93, moved into a home and had an office, actual office.
So you had to have a lot of discipline, because at 23,
You
24, working at home,
You
not
do.
going to an office.
Oh, it's real
you
easy
get
to
sidetracked.
just not get up. Yeah,
Totally.
if you're not
Driven.
motivated and driven yourself, it's not the right occupation, I can tell you. But you know what? The companies, it's real easy. I can look at the numbers. They're going to know whether that's your report card.
You're sleeping on the...
Exactly.
Right.
So I would be in the office usually doing paperwork all day. There was a lot more paperwork back then than there is now. Now it's all right on the
your
iPad
phone,
and
you
electronic.
save it digitally.
So I do that on Mondays. I even remember when fax machines came out.
Right,
And you'd come home and it would have been
The little
rolled
roll-up.
up, that type of paper laying on the floor.
Yeah.
And
Those were orders.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. How many orders I get? Tuesday morning, usually leave early, be out, Tuesday and Wednesday night, get back in like late Thursday, work in the office on Friday morning, and then be at the country club to play golf by lunch on Friday afternoon. That was kind of the routine.
That's a great routine.
And so it was a great opportunity, and did it for 5.5 years. And the Century rep in Jackson, Mississippi, decided, and he was fairly young, and it was a real. I'll never forget this. It says a lot about Century. The gentleman's name was Tom Dumontier, and he was the first guy to ever leave Century on his own. That either didn't retire or was maybe fired.
Yeah, that's
so
a lot
never
to
left to
say
go to
about-
another company,
Right.
which was really
That's
pretty
so
impressive.
interesting.
And so I knew I wanted to go to work for them.
So what put Century on your radar, like when you were with Drexel? Like you thought that as being a step up, or
It was real interesting because I have Drexel at the time was a much bigger name than Century. Kind of back in that era, Drexel usually sold the #1 major retailer in the town, and Century might have sold the secondary one. That was
Right.
kind of the way it went, because you just didn't. There was a lot of selective distribution. You didn't sell them both usually back then. I mean, one had one line, one would have the other. But Century was family owned. It still is same family, Shuford
Same,
family,
right.
the entire time. Whereas Drexel was owned by Masco at the time,
so
who
wasn't-
really wasn't they didn't do the greatest job in my opinion. They had Drexel Heritage, Henry Dunn, Thomasville. I guess we all know what's happened with those companies.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so crazy to think
I like
that
the idea
way.
of going to work for a family-owned company. I'd heard a lot about the Shuford family, and they were really,
And
really.
where is Century based out of?
Hickory, North Carolina,
Hickory, okay.
which is where most of them.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, at that time, you've got Hickory has Century, Sherrill, Vanguard, Bernhardt, and then you've got Morganton, North Carolina, which is only 15 minutes away. That was Drexel Heritage, Henry Dunn, E.J. Victor. They're all right there. And so real close towns. And so that was 93, same territory.
So what does it look like to, go after that job, to make a flip from like a Drexel to Century? Like, I mean, you put the feelers out, do you?
Well, so I knew about Tom's looming retirement, and so I reached out to a couple of my big customers that I sold, told them I was interested in that particular job, and they were like, and of course, and it was real interesting. They were like,
Really?
"What? Really? We're never going to sell as much Century as we do Drexel Heritage." I said, "Well, we'll have to wait and see about that."
So when you're in that as a rep for a furniture line, do you get to become friendly with the reps of all the other furniture lines?
You do somewhat.
You run into them.
Sometimes, some would come into town and we'd go out to eat. I mean, there was a lot of them that I did have friends with. I mean,
So any animosity of sales and
healthy competition?
No, every now and then you maybe have a rep you don't really care for, but I wouldn't necessarily spending time with him or go out to eat with him. But I did have a lot of friends that were competitors, and
healthy competition is good.
It is.
Yeah, no,
it
absolutely.
It is, and we could kind of bounce ideas off of each other and things like that. So, as a matter of fact, one of the ones that was my toughest competitor back then ended up coming to work and when I moved to South Florida with Century, he took my old territory with Century. He moved from Henry Dunn to Century. So, sometimes it helps to know these people, and it helps to tell management this is who you need to get.
Right.
This guy's.
So was that sort of your next step in the career, was coming to Florida?
So at High Point, there was 4 of us shared a house. There was a rep in Arizona who's since retired, one on the east coast of Florida and lived in Parkland, and one on the west coast of Florida. The East Coast of Florida rep, whose name was David Blair, had been in management with Simmons and other companies before, and I always thought that he had that in his blood to get back into the home office and be and he had the opportunity to go back to North Carolina to be the senior vice president of sales. And I'd always said, if you go back in, I want your territory, because I went from traveling 3 states to go, and I live in West Palm, to going to Melbourne, Miami. That's it.
Right.
I have no overnight travel. It's unheard of in this industry. Now, when I go to the Keys, I will stay overnight.
Of course,
but
why not?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, and I have San Juan in the Bahamas, and obviously those are. But I mean, you just don't get that kind of territory, and to really, make and what you really want with a high-end company like a Century is you want to be in a second home market where there's a lot of condensed wealth, and we've got that down here.
Right.
Wow, that's an
so.
interesting fact.
So at what point along the line did you start picking up other brands?
So I was, not until Century bought Highland House. I don't even know. I can't even remember the year now. And I didn't initially have Highland House. They didn't really think. First of all, when we first got it, it was really a northern company, very brown, very, I would say it probably really thrived in New York and the Northeast, and that it didn't have the look as much for Florida.
Right.
And then when the current president, Nathan Copeland, was announced president, he had a vision, and I kind of thought that vision sounded I liked what I was hearing, and so I picked up the Highland House for the exact same area that I've got now. No. There's
so
another.
How does that work with Century and Highland House, like before they were even aligned? Like, do you have to get approvals?
Well, obviously you have to, not only would Nathan have had to sign off on it, but Alex Shuford would have had to sign off on it as well, which he did. And in a lot of cases it was you've got some of your customers sell both. A lot of them don't sell one, they sell the other, or a lot prefer Highland House over Century. I mean, it just depends on the look and what they're trying to achieve in their business. And so
and were you affiliated with like Century's showroom at the Design Center? Like, how does that cross over?
We started the To The Trade showroom in Dakota in like after I got here, and it would have been around, I think, 2001 or 2 or somewhere in there. And at the very first manager, there was a gentleman named John Welker, and he ran that showroom for, and so I am. I do, that is my account, and I take care of them. Now, they're pretty self-sufficient. I mean, you're scanning their fabrics a couple of times a year, but they really are dealing with the factory and doing most of the stuff on their own. They have their own customer service rep, and obviously I'll jump in when they need me, and if they have events down there and things like that. So we've so it's been in place there now since about 2001, and us and Baker are like the only ones left.
I know. We were so lucky when that was what it was, Dakota.
It was something else.
It really was. I mean, people, it's kind of a bummer, but. Well,
and we've looked, we just want to make sure we find, if we're going to move, it's got to be the right place,
strategic.
And it really needs to be with everybody else, because that's, it makes it so much easier for the designers when they can go to one area and do all the shopping. So we just haven't found what we feel is ideal for us yet.
In that area.
Yeah, we've looked because it's kind of quiet around there.
I know.
It is. And, it's mixed use. There's many different businesses
I know
in
they
there.
crack up that there's like Chewy's headquarters. It's like such a, when really it was such a special
And
time.
I even hear my uncle, so that was with Drexel Heritage, he started off in Plantation, Florida, and I hear him talk about the design district in Miami and how big that was. Obviously that was before, by the time I got here, it wasn't. But I hear that was just something else back then.
I know, and then it died, and now it's
coming back.
It's
not all furniture. It's a lot of,
it's more,
but it's definitely thriving.
It is definitely thriving.
More fashion,
it's
right?
definitely
it's just
more fashion.
It's all fashion.
Yeah.
That's what it
really
is. Whether it be interiors or whether it be clothing, or it's fashion. Yeah.
Right.
And the two industries have collaborated and crossed over so much nowadays. It kind of lends itself to evolve that way.
It does.
Yeah, it is interesting. So when you're a rep, what is like we just kind of touched on your day-to-day that you get to work mainly from home.
Well, it's a whole lot. What I gave you that day-to-day was back in the early 90s in Jackson, Mississippi. It has completely changed.
Right.
Now, you just don't have the furniture retailers that
like
you did have. Now,
Correct.
this area down here is very, very unique in that you do have Bears, Robin Stuckey, and Clive Daniel. You just don't have that anywhere else in the country.
Right.
You've got 3 big-time, thriving retailers that are, that are in the upper end business. And then after that, you've got a few out there, but it really is design business after that. I mean, it's just that's where it has changed totally. And Century was one of the first to really go after that business.
Interior
we do
designers.
notice now, and Hickory Chair as well. Yep. And we do. I notice now that there's many other of these companies that are taking the time to really cultivate that design business.
How many of the lines that you represent will sell to the general public online? Are any of them?
Well, yeah, we do. Now, what we do is we have when we're selling, it's typically distressed and discontinued merchandise,
Right.
Okay.
or pass through that our imports that you can only get them one way.
Right.
And what we have is we have a map price. Our price that we have on there is much higher than if they were to go
Correct.
into a retailer and get it.
Which is great for us. As
it is, and it was one of
interior
Alex's
designers.
thoughts is that when we started this was the consumer really doesn't know what a good price is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they see our price at X amount of dollars and they were to walk into a retailer or deal with the designer, and that designer has a better price because they're able to do that, then they automatically associate the design firm or the retailer with having a value. And so that was the thought process of doing that. And it also helps us clear out, merchandise we need to get rid of.
Right.
So what percentage, is there a percentage of business that is really derived from designers? Is it more?
We are probably, we get these, I would say we're probably about 60-40, 60 probably still retail because the big retail can do so much volume, but the design business is probably about 40% of it, which is really grown. I mean, that is much
a big
bigger number.
Growth, yeah.
We find that it's the average consumer doesn't understand, an interior designer, I'm going to pay so much more.
Right.
And it's one of the reasons why we have the podcast is trying to help educate people that going to a designer, you're most likely going to get a better price than you will if you go to a store. I hate to say it, or find it on online. But you're getting the designer to help you put everything together.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the cost and what you're getting is so much better.
Fair.
It's basically, I've always equated to design, because my father was in the brokerage industry for his entire career, but he's not selling stocks. He's a financial planner.
Right.
Financial planners like interior designer. I mean,
Yeah.
you can always
Boutique.
be the one that wants to deal with Charles Schwab and go buy your one-piece furniture at a furniture store and do it yourself.
Right.
But it's makes a whole lot more sense probably monetarily in the long run, but after you make all your mistakes, that you just have someone do it for you from the get-go.
And
that's
the
It's
thing
true.
that people don't realize, and they realize it after they've made the mistakes.
Yeah. They think they're saving money.
Yes.
Totally.
And then in the long run, oh, wait a minute. And then they want to go back and return it because it was too big.
Right.
Or for whatever reason. Or the finish isn't what I really thought it was going to be.
Totally.
So,
And I always say people fall in love with a finished palette, a finished project. It's that cohesive, pulled
Yes.
together look.
well,
that
and that's
seals
why y'all
the
are putting
deal.
it all together for them. And it's real interesting. I would say 15 years ago, very rarely did you ever have a designer have their customer with them at High Point. Now we're seeing
It's
it
so
all
true.
the time.
You're right.
Well, it was my first time going to High Point. Tiffany, she's gone many times, but for me this year going, I came. We were on the plane flying back, and I said to her, every house that you do, that clients are spending a fair amount of money, you need to take them here for 2 days.
He's like, is it open year round?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
was
said to
like-
him after I think there was maybe the first or second day we were there. Is this open? She's
So-
like, yes, this place is open.
It's a great question. Now, first of all, so this was our second market at marking all of our product at retail on the floor. We hadn't done that in the past. It's always been at wholesale.
Really?
And, yep. And I guess obviously the designers that were bringing their customers there when it was marked, they probably had their arrangements set up front. They were probably paying
Getting.
by the hour, and they were doing it on a
Right.
cost plus, so it didn't really matter. And
Right.
but it does make it easier to bring your customer in if it's
Yeah.
marked at retail. As far as being open year-round, okay, it is. But I would tell you probably what is right about now, if not even before, it's starting to get sparse from samples we wanted to sell off after market, them being picked up, starting to plan for April. So while it is
not
open,
okay.
you're probably not going to get really a good representation of what that showroom was at market unless you do it within 6 to 8 weeks after
Right
market.
after.
Okay, that makes sense.
That does make sense. Because the other thing I feel like that's different from a furniture store versus like going to market or to Dakota was I feel like the presentation, people can sense the value immediately.
Yeah.
Where a furniture store sometimes gets so cluttered, it's not as like they're trying to curate spaces. Where I feel like the actual showrooms and like Dakota, you actually can sense the high end. You can feel it.
And you
really
have some
do.
retailers. Not all retailers are created equal, as we know, and
Agreed.
some of them
Right.
spend
Yes.
more. They put more emphasis on the best price. Some put most emphasis on the best presentation, and
Yes.
so there is a different difference. But yes, that's what I've always said. If someone comes to see us in High Point, they're going to have a real appreciation
Without
for
a
what they're
doubt.
buying. They're going to understand the price point a
Without
whole lot
a-
easier than
so
looking at something
much.
online.
So much so. I mean, that was my big takeaway from my most recent visit to market was just people wouldn't question the price anymore.
No.
Like the value is felt.
Well, there's the other side to it, which I know that we're going through with you right now on some items, is the customization of items that, I've only been really involved with Tiffany she's been doing it for 25 years. I've only in the last maybe 2.5 years gotten involved helping her because the business is doing so well. But realizing going into the furniture store, it's what they have on the floor typically. But when you look at like Highland House where you can just change every aspect of the item, and it's like Tiffany tells me, that item is actually 5,000 different items. And I'm like, what do you mean by that?
It's
She's like,
endless.
because virtually any fabric that you want, you could change the finishes. So
Yeah.
the process of that. I mean, that's an interesting process.
Well, that's the way we'll sometimes come up with how many SKUs we've actually got. If you take that one piece, 60 different finishes, okay, that's 60 right there.
Right, exactly.
And you can just can make the number so grand. But that's the luxury of having a domestic manufacturing facility.
Right.
So I would say, ourselves and most all of our competition are doing the upholstery domestically. But we're literally the only ones left that have a case goods manufacturing facility that's actually making case goods still in Hickory.
So tell us about that.
Well, it's wonderful because we can custom size not just upholstery but case goods. As long as it's something we're making, then we're able to, you can reach out to customer service and you can give them the dimensions you want on that cocktail table or that credenza or that dining table. And usually within 24 hours, you're going to have a price and lead time.
Amazing.
And that's only because we manufacture still.
But it's not just the size; it's also the fabrics. It's the wood finish.
Correct. Yes. It's everything. Yeah.
Is that for both brands?
It is because they're both being made in the same factory.
Same factory.
Yep. Highland House and Century are manufactured in the exact same factories.
Yeah.
Century, I always think of using their fabrics more than I do of customizing for some reason. Is there one that is easier to work with? Or?
I mean, it's just what Highland House has a ton of color. That's kind of what they're known for. Everybody's got the same planes. I mean, so you're not really reinventing much of the game there, and they've all got the same performance fabrics. But I would tell you, with both companies, I think we get 50 to 60 COM shipments in a day.
Jeez.
I mean, that is how much.
That's
we do
lot.
a ton of COM business because a lot of the design firms, they're smart. They don't want to keep all the fabrics. They know what they love. If it's a perennials or if it's a Schumacher, they know what they like, and they feel like that. Then they've got all their books and things that they work with. So that's as design business grew, so did COM business.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like when you say like Schumacher is mainly they're a fabric house. I mean, they do have some furniture, but they're known as
Tiffany is a COM junkie.
I can see.
Love that. I love COM.
Well, you know what? It's that you get exactly what you want.
Exactly.
Well, one of the real luxuries now that you bring that up is. So as you were mentioning the family of brands, so just for the listeners will know that
that's what we wanted to ask you.
Century Highland House, Hancock and Moore, Jessica Charles, Maitland Smith, Hickory Chair, Pearson, and then Cabot Wren, which is more of a contract.
There's some powerful brands there.
Very powerful.
And are you involved in all of them?
No, I'm only Century and Highland House. Okay. The other ones have their reps. And then so Highland House was the first company that was purchased. Then the next would have been Hancock and Moore, Jessica Charles, and Maitland. And along with that purchase came the 200 Steel Building, which is where, you've shopped with us at Market. And it's literally beautiful. Now the high-end place to go.
I know. What an amazing
That's
addition.
A big building.
It is. And it's got, you've got John Richards. You've got
it's unbelievable.
Chaddock. I mean, it's got all the, if you're a high-end designer, you can spend the day there.
Without a doubt. Tell us about the Rock Creek. Tell us about, I always find it interesting, hearing about the ownership groups and, the family, the mentality,
So the Shuford family is fourth generation. Alex is the present CEO now of Rock House. And so the Rock House name came about, I believe, after the purchase of Hancock and Moore, because it was just like Century and we own Highland House, before.
Right.
But they're horse people. They've been in the horse business their whole life. The Shufords, one of the daughters, they had a condo in Wellington at the Polo Club because the daughter rode, and so they've always. So that's how the Rock House Farms, which is part of their horse businesses, that's how they came up with the name. So you'll see Rock House Farms sometimes, or you'll see Rock House Family of Brands. We just opened up there are actually two to the trade Rock House showrooms right now.
Really?
Yep. There's one on the west coast
of Florida,
IDS, which is has there, and then we opened up one Designer Resource.
Yes.
That's in Boca. Just opened up one in Palm Beach, and so it's got there's two entrances. There's the Rock House entrance, which is all the Rock House brands, and then there's a design center in the middle, and then on the other side are all the other brands that aren't Rock House, i.e. Vanguard, Lexington, Woodbridge, those kind of companies.
Right.
And so, yes, there is one of the great things that you can do within the Rock House family of brands is all the fabrics are interchangeable, and you don't have to COM them.
Really?
So
Wow.
So if you have a grade 18 on Century and you want to put it on Highland House, there's a crossover.
fine.
It tells you how to find that grade, and you just price it out. So it really gives you a whole lot of fabrics at your fingertips that you're able to use.
Huh.
That is, I know, it's fascinating how that all
Yeah.
falls. I didn't realize that they were opening, like, is that part of their model now is to probably
Well, it's something we are
entertaining?
Yeah. I think you'll see more that we're actually. We've never been a part of the Las Vegas market. All right, we will be for the very first time in January, and we are opening up our own 10,000 square foot to the trade showroom in Vegas, which we will use for markets in January and July, but it'll be open year round.
Year round.
It would be like having Dakota
Yes.
in an area that has a market.
Right.
And so that will be a Rock House showroom there. And so we're actually going out. We're having a meeting in Vegas in January that we're going to kind of see the showroom, and for those people that want to hang out for the market, like I don't have anybody that goes to the Vegas market
Right,
from
but
around
you
here.
probably will
Yeah,
eventually.
and it'll be
grow.
really strong for the West Coast reps though, because that's it's a lot of work and expense to come to High Point from California and Washington,
Oh,
and
that's
Oregon.
true.
So this is somewhere where they can go
there.
and not have to travel quite as far. So we feel like it'll be a really great kind of regional market.
So now that Rock House has so many under their umbrella, do they, besides obviously in-house switching fabrics, but do they collaborate? Do they do any collaborations with designers? Do they?
There are. I mean, they typically have their own. Like if one, we have yet to have one do a like a licensing collection for multiple companies. Like Century just did one with Tara Shaw this past market. And it was fabulous.
And that was the first time that they had done that?
That was no. We've got
you
Thomas
do.
O'Brien. We've
Yeah,
got many
I was
that we've
gonna
done over
say.
the years, but there's never been like one designer that's done for two different companies of ours. Once they've done for that company, they're pretty much stuck with that particular company. But the Tara Shaw introduction went over very, very well. And
Very exciting.
Yeah, it was. She did the whole thing brought in all of her accessories and antiques, and it was really.
I don't know who she is. Who is
she? She is a designer that has her own shop on Magazine Street in New Orleans.
Okay.
And she has been a European antique shopper her whole life. And I can tell you,
Wow.
while this was, it might be a little early for Florida, we can see this traditionals coming back.
It is coming back, the
every
traditional.
single day. It really is.
Which is great.
So did you guys go to her, or did she come to you?
Now that one I can't answer because I wasn't involved in that,
Okay.
but I imagine it's probably both had been talking for a while, would be my guess. And one of the great things that you can do that we do after each market and be worthwhile for y'all since you haven't seen it, when you go onto the website and into the portal, we do a 360-degree tour of the showroom where you can go on and walk through it.
Oh,
and
that's
it's
cool.
fabulous. I'll even show y'all how
I
to
took
do that after we
100
get done here. It's
pictures,
really
but-
great. Then you can go through and when you're trying to remember something at market that you saw or you want
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can't
yeah.
remember,
true.
you can go right through there and find it. So it's really it's a great tool.
That is cool. So being a rep, what would you say are some of the benefits, the perks? Like, is your house full of Century and Highland?
Well, I would say that's definitely a perk. I've got my wife and I are more traditional at the time when we were getting married and furnishing it. So there's probably more Drexel heritage in there because that's who I was working
Right.
for. There is Century. What I like to do is when we're closing stuff out and we got a nice discount on it, that's the best time.
That's
There's
right.
nothing wrong with it. We're just not going to make it anymore. So,
Right.
Over time, that's definite fringe benefit for sure. I mean, you're getting the best stuff that in your home at a much better price than most people would. So
Right.
that's great. I think the freedom to make your own schedule would be the number one thing. It's really funny. My wife says I've never taken the only vacation that anybody knows I've officially ever taken in my life was the honeymoon for a week because I'm always working even when I am out of town, because you've got your phone, you've got the texts and the emails from, got to take care of these designers. They're pretty needy. Right. And and I got reprimanded one Mother's Day lunch because I took a phone call, and she's like, Jim, are you kidding? On Mother's Day? I was like, well, if they're going to make money for us, then we'll certainly answer their phone calls.
That's funny.
But the freedom of making your own schedule would be really, I would say, the top thing about being a rep.
I like that. And what are like one or two of the things that you've learned along the way in this career that have been like a really important?
That you follow up.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I guess maybe to summarize her question is, what's the best advice that you would give someone who wants to be a rep, was thinking about being a rep?
You better follow up.
Follow up.
That's it. And the thing that's most telling to me is when I'll have a call, and where you really get a lot of them, it's not from necessarily as much the designers on the weekend, but the retail operations, because they can't get in touch with the factory, obviously, on Saturdays and Sundays, so they're calling us. And when you answer and they go, hey, Jim, this is so-and-so from thank you so much for picking up, that just tells me that my competitors aren't picking
answering.
Up. And so that right there is where you usually can separate yourself. If you follow up and get them the things they need, because nowadays – that's the biggest part of our job is, fulfill it's, before you were going out, when I was covering Mississippi and there are all these furniture stores, you're literally going out, sitting down, writing orders and things. You're not doing that as much anymore. When you're dealing with the big retailers, they pretty much have their floors set and you're just reordering. But designers are needing finished chips, they're needing fabrics, they're needing you to price things. So following up would be the absolute number one thing, I would say.
Well, I'll tell you from an interior designer's perspective, that's the single most important thing as well, is the follow-up with the client.
Yeah.
You could be off on a little bit of a design, you could be late in getting things, but if you're following up and you're communicating and you're keeping them informed,
right,
there's nothing better.
And the emails, I try and stay on top of them and answer them as quick as I can, because, if you don't, they're just going to build up. But it drives me crazy when I'm waiting on an answer and I haven't gotten one. And it happens sometimes with our own company, and I just think there ought to be a 24-hour rule. You certainly can answer within 24 hours.
I know, and I try to tell myself that, because so many clients, you think they can go online and, buy a lipstick in 10 seconds, and it's they don't understand, well, what do you mean? You don't have the price yet. What do you mean you don't? They think it's all instantaneous. It
is funny though, because you can get answers usually on purchasing an automobile much quicker than you can in the furniture industry. I mean, it's just a very hands-on.
It's very detailed.
It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's still a mom and pop industry.
You're right. That's actually a great little spin on that. That it is a big industry.
So, in what you do, how important in today's world? It's so important to so many people. Social media, being involved in it. Not
it's obviously, and I'm at the age that I'm not as probably involved in it as I should be, but I can just tell you that it is probably the number one thing. It may be the number one thing. I've seen just the careers of some of these people.
It's insane.
And you don't want to say there's more sizzle than steak there, but they're putting themselves out there.
They are.
They're being noticed. And I just watch it with my kids. They're right on top of it. And they just, it's just a big thing.
So speaking of your kids, isn't your daughter in the industry now?
No,
or your wife is?
Well, my wife is the Woodbridge rep.
Right.
Okay, and then she wasn't able. She had a little health issues the last couple markets, and so my daughter was there to fill in for her during market. But Mary Elaine was actually coming from school doing that. She graduated from Ole Miss in May.
Aww.
And she now is. She majored in finance and real estate with a minor in entrepreneurship. And she's got a flair for this business, and I think would love to be maybe a rep one day. But she went to work for a boutique wealth management firm in Atlanta.
Oh, how good for her.
In Buckhead, and it's 5 employees. But I believe she'll probably take a vacation day on Friday and Monday of the hot weekends of market, because she loves coming and doing it so much. And she worked for John Richards about 2 or 3 markets in a row as well.
Oh, so it is a family affair.
No, it is.
A minor in entrepreneurship. I haven't heard that.
You know what's really interesting? She went to high school in Oxbridge.
Oh, shit, here.
And they had entrepreneurship in high school.
Well, the same. Our kids go to American Heritage, and they have.
Yeah, and
But I didn't realize it was a college.
Yeah, and what's so cool about Oxbridge was that they really prepare you for college.
Such a good school.
Treated more like a college,
Right.
Yeah.
you know?
Yep.
And that's the luxury of Bill Koch owning it. He can do whatever he wants
Right.
to do. You know?
Yeah. I know. What a cool.
Yeah.
That's such a.
But she had at Ole Miss too, entrepreneurship. So to me, I mean, I hear the things they're doing. I'm like, this is way more important than a lot of these classes. This is really what life's all about.
That's the truth. I agree.
So we want to ask a couple of
Yeah.
questions.
So as we wrap up, we like to just for personality and get to know you. What is your favorite restaurant, design-wise?
Design-wise,
Yeah.
Or it could be food too.
Well, two different things there. I'm gonna say the restaurant that's in the Ray Hotel,
I know.
Akira
Back, yeah.
Akira Bach. I think that's a really, really, really cool place.
Yeah.
Food's great too. Ambiance is the Echo in Palm Beach is also really a kind of a cool.
And that's
it's
had
got that
staying
Asian
power too.
Yes,
So that says a lot.
That's a really cool place too. But those two come to mind. They're very similar to that Asian fusion feel to it.
Yep. I like that.
So is there a hotel that comes to mind from a design standpoint that sticks out?
Delano.
The Delano. Okay.
Delano is. I remember going to it when I first moved here.
Right.
In 2000, and that was when I guess Madonna had made it famous. And
correct.
The white
and
everywhere.
you didn't even know you had to know where you were going because there's no sign out there. There's nothing. You just had the cloth hanging down.
So true.
And I actually stayed there one night with a buddy of mine had come in from out of town, and we hadn't moved as a family yet, and went down there because I'd heard all about it. That's a pretty cool place.
Yeah, and I love that you said that too because it was such a iconic like design element with Philippe Stark and just
Philippe
like all
Stark
those
did it, that's
pieces
right.
and like the table in the middle and just very.
And I typically prefer like the boutique hotels versus. I mean, look, the Fontainebleau's great, but I mean it's a monster. I like especially if we love New Orleans, and if you go there, those little boutique hotels around the quarter are really kind of cool to go to.
Very, very cool. Very cool. What is your favorite event to attend?
The Masters.
Have you been?
I have a few times. Now I would tell you as close.
Are you love golf?
Yeah, I mean I'm a golfer. I've been lucky enough to go to almost every. I've been to the Super Bowls. I've been to the World Series. I've been to NBA championships. That is the greatest run sporting event that I've ever been around.
The Masters.
Yeah. But now I will say, if Marcy were sitting here, she would say the Kentucky Derby.
Oh,
we've
that
done
would
that
be fabulous
a number of times too. And kind of got the president of Woodbridge, Kevin Henshaw, who's a good close friend of mine. He's a big horse guy, and that's how we went for the first time with them. And so we've done that a number of times. And as far as the pomp and circumstance goes,
that's
it's
pretty
hard
special.
To be beat.
Yeah.
It is. It's the one flight you'll go on where every overhead compartment is hat boxes.
So you're a sports person?
I am. Sports? Yeah. I mean, I played college tennis, grew up playing sports, and I mean, I am definitely a sports person.
So Masters, did you go for a day, or did you go for?
I've gone to the practice rounds. I've gone on Thursday and Friday. Never been for the weekend. My perfect plan with the Masters is to go either on Thursday or Friday, or if you have the opportunity to go both. Flight home Saturday morning
so
and be in my home watching it on the weekend.
I
That's
agree.
Really that's the perfect plan for me.
Yeah.
But you don't turn down any day if you get the opportunity to go.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Well, I actually think that's a great way to wrap up on a high note of the Masters and the Kentucky Derby.
We appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to a long and lasting relationship with you.
Yes.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
iDesign Labs podcast is an SW Group production in association with the 5-Star and TW Interiors. To learn more about iDesign Lab or TW Interiors, please visit twinteriors.com.